Good afternoon again. Thank you for your patience. Thankful once again to be in the house of God, especially as Deacon Ramakum would have said, considering what would have happened this week. I was very concerned if I would even make it, out of the house. But we're all here, amen? I want to greet those who are online. I hope that today's message is inspiring and also educational. I greet all the visitors who are here with us in person. I greet our congregation here. Special greetings to our diaconate, our elders and their wives. And thanks once again for giving me the opportunity to address the people of God. Now, brethren, today's message is entitled, Give Me Spiritual Eyes. And it was a very reflective preparation as I meditated on what to speak to you about today, especially in terms of recent events and also the expectation of God's people. Tomorrow is International Men's Day, and we celebrate that on November 19th. So today I wanted to pay special focus and attention on the men. Last time it was, I think, Women's Day, and I did the role of women, and some of the women were like, you need to tell the men what their role is as well. So today is for the men, but not only the men. Now I'll start off with this thought. And it says here, for those of you who won't be able to read from the screen, from the creation of man, the role of men has been and continues to be under threat. And when I refer to the creation of man, I'm speaking specifically to the Garden of Eden, the fall in Genesis 3, and what would have happened from Adam and Eve. As we know the story well, Eve would have been deceived by the serpent, would have given fruit to her husband, and her husband listened, despite the commandments he would have gotten from God. And we saw a problem occur where men who were supposed to be the leaders, supposed to be the teachers, the one who got the instruction and was supposed to pass it on, turned away from the ways of God. We also see modern day trends in terms of transgender. Tomorrow is International Men's Day, and the world is not sure what that exactly means anymore. We don't know what the definition of a man is. It's so strange. I remember going up in high school listening to some songs, and I remember one popular song, I Can't Believe My Eye. I never thought that in this day and age that I would live to see that men don't know who they are and women don't know who they are. Oh, yes. That they can just change gender. The role of men in terms of the pastoral role is also under threat as the egalitarian movement and progressive thought picks up steam. And in this time of gender equality, the role of men is undoubtedly questioned also in the home. So, brethren, today I have a simple task that I want you to journey along with me on. Today's objective is very simple. I would like to examine the life of a godly man so that members of the church can have an appreciation in terms of what we are to look for, what we are to desire, and what we are to become. Identify some lessons, and I've identified 7 that I'll share today. And I want us to truly meditate on how we can apply these lessons in our own life. I'll start out with a question. And this is, well, conveniently or not, my favorite passage in the Bible. It starts in Matthew 16, 24 to 28, and a question is asked by Jesus. From 24 it reads, Then Jesus told his disciples, If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. 26, my favorite. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay each person according to what he has done. Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. And I want to really ask the congregation this question. When this question was asked, what shall a man give in return for his soul? Have you ever truly considered that? We say that we are born again and that we hope for salvation that our minds cannot even comprehend. And we know the way to get there through obedience, through belief in Jesus Christ, and to walk on the righteous path. But have you ever truly considered it? What shall a man give in return for his soul? We have seen many persons leave the church. And what did they give? What did they gain? Are they any better than when we were in church? Are they millionaires? Are they billionaires? Did they achieve some sort of love that is still going on today that will make them give up this truth that we know? I've also considered this question, and I consider myself to be a relatively ambitious person. And with all that I know, brethren, I've examined many religions, I've examined many denominations, I've examined the arguments of the atheists. I've seen how the world lives, the most powerful men, billionaires, millionaires. I've seen in Jamaica the haves and the have-not. I've truly considered this question. And when I thought about all of it, my answer was not even $100 billion. I remember I told somebody that one time, and they're like, what? If they came to you with $1 billion US, you wouldn't? No. You wouldn't consider it. Not even 100 billion. And I say not even 100 billion for a particular reason. I read in the news the other day that as this war in Israel and Palestine rages on, President Joe Biden of the United States asked Congress for $100 billion in foreign aid to help not only Israel, Ukraine, and I think Mexico was in there as well. But the point is, if you consider the cost of war, it's a very expensive thing. And in a time of economic turmoil and financial challenges, $100 billion. And that to me is a very small thing. I would still not give up the kingdom of God for that. And today, by the end of today's sermon, I hope you will understand, and those who are watching will understand why $100 billion would not cause me to flinch in giving up the kingdom of God. Today's main lesson will be taken from 2 Kings. And the man that we'll be analyzing today is the prophet Elisha. Not Elijah. Elisha in 2 Kings. There's a particular narrative, brethren. And I remember when reading it, I thought to myself, if I have access to this, then nothing in the world can stand against me. We pick up from 2 Kings chapter 6, verses 8 to 23. Most of the sermon will be there, but we'll be hovering in and around 2 Kings, 1 Kings, just to get the full understanding of who Elisha was. We'll pick up in verse 8 of 2 Kings 6. The narrative is usually entitled Horses and Chariots of Fire. Verse 8 reads, Once, when the king of Syria was warring against Israel, he took counsel with his servants, saying, At such and such a place shall be my camp. But the man of God sent word to the king of Israel, Beware that you do not pass this place, for the Syrians are going down there. And the king of Israel sent to the place about which the man of God told him. Thus he used to warn him, so that he saved himself there more than once or twice. And the mind of the king of Syria was greatly troubled because of this thing. And he called his servants and said to them, Will you not show me who of us is for the king of Israel? Now I want you to understand what is happening. You have the king of Syria. You have the king of Israel. There's a war going on between two of them. The king of Syria keeps on putting traps in place or military camps or campaigns in place to defeat the king of Israel. And every time he sets a trap or he organizes a military campaign, the king of Israel somehow is able to know what is going on and avoids this trap. Now imagine if I was in Jamaica and there were two rival gangs. Just think about it. And one of the gangs constantly trying to catch the other one. No matter what they do, the other gang outmaneuvers them. The first thing that comes to your mind is that there must be a traitor in the camp. Fair assumption, no? That's a fair assumption. There must be somebody inside our camp who is telling the other side what is going on and your every move. So my first thing is going to, who inside of the camp is an informer? Fair? 11, and the mind of the king of Assyria was greatly troubled. By the way, I'm not calling the king of Israel a gang member. And, this is not anti-Semitic in any way. It's just a point. 11, and the mind of the king of Syria was greatly troubled because of this thing. And he called his servants and said to them, Will you not show me who of us is for the king of Israel? And one of his servants said, None, my lord, O king. But Elisha, the prophet, who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. No, very strange. And he said, Go and see where he is, that I may send and seize him. And it was told him, Behold, he is in Dothan. Now, I have a map. And usually when we're going through these types of chapters, I like to see where exactly it's taking place. So on the screen, I have 3 different maps, and the maps show the different progression of the region over time. On the left-hand side, what you'll see is the ancient kingdom of Israel, just as Joshua would have taken them into the land. And what you'll notice is that each tribe has their assigned space. I put a star right in the middle of Manasseh. I think it's yellow on yellow, so it's hard to see. But right in Manasseh, you see a star there. That is where Dothan is located. The middle map, it's after King Solomon when the kingdom was split in 2. The northern kingdom was the kingdom of Israel. As you can see the star there by the word Israel. And south was the kingdom of Judah. Jerusalem as its capital, Samaria as the capital of the north. So what you'll notice is that it's a kingdom of the northern set of tribes that is being spoken of. And this is where Elisha is. He's in the northern kingdom of Israel after the split has occurred. Everybody's following so far, right? What I've also done, just for persons who are watching the news, is also put a map of what modern day Israel looks like today. And what you will see in beige is the modern state of Israel, and in green, it is the occupied territory known as the West Bank, where the Palestinians are. And what you know is that the star is consistent to let you know where exactly this is located. The person that is on the opposite side is the king of Syria, to the top right. Here in the middle, you see Syria once again with Damascus at the top. And on the left, it's called the Arameans, or the king of Aram in some Bibles. So everybody's clear in where we're located, right? King of Syria is going down to the northern kingdom of Israel, and they're operating military campaigns. Everybody's clear on where we are, right? So this is a little bit of the context geographically where we are. Now, as we read on in 2 Kings verse 14, it says, "So he sent their horses and chariots and a great army. And they came by night and surrounded the city." So I want you to understand. He sent a great army for Elisha. Not for the entire kingdom of Israel. For one man, a great army was sent. I want you to understand the gravity of the situation. There's no bucketive waiting. It's one man. And he sends a great army for the one man. Everybody's understanding the context, right? If we put this in modern day Jamaica, you know it's a big problem that has just occurred. Okay. 15. When the servant of the man of God rose early in the morning and went out, behold, an army with the horses and chariots was all around the city. And the servant said, "Alas, my master, what shall we do?" He said, "Do not be afraid, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them." Now, what kind of madness is going on in this story? Now, can you imagine? Me and Jeremy are in Spanish Town. Of course, I'm the master. Jeremy is my servant. Yeah. So Jeremy gets up and looks outside and says, "Ray, you don't see the man them come to kill me. Look how much first outside." And I calmly said to him, "Jeremy, relax. There are more on our two of us, you know. There are more on our side than there are on their side." Jeremy must be looking at me like, "No, you must lick your head last night." But this was the situation. Don't be afraid, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. 17. And this is the main focus of my sermon. Then Elisha prayed and said, "O Lord, please open his eyes that he may see." So the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. Imagine. Spiritual eyes. The young man could not see what Elisha saw. The young man was gripped with fear. Elisha was not. And why? Because Elisha had a different worldview from him. Elisha's worldview was a spiritual one. Not by sight, but by faith. By belief and an understanding in God. And here's a significant thing about this narrative. The horses and the chariots were always there. We're always there. Now imagine if I'm in this congregation with you today and I say to you, ladies and gentlemen, people of God, there's an army surrounding us in our very midst. If only we could open our eyes and see. When we leave this congregation, there are angels that are following you. When you're at home, there are angels that encamp it around you. But you have to have faith to be able to believe, to see and know. The chariots did not come when the eyes were opened. They were always there. And this is what I want us to meditate on. We are always in a spiritual situation, whether you can see it or not. But as people of God, we have to know at all times that we're always in a spiritual situation. And that there are spiritual forces, good and evil, that are around us at all times. Elisha saw. The young man did not see. And the first lesson that I want us to take from that is, for today's time, we need men with spiritual eyes, who has a worldview that is not led by politics or by business, but our worldview is led by God and spiritual things. And this is not just for the men. This is also for the women. Because here's the irony. Every young woman has a father. And you look to your father for certain things. So if you're a daughter, you should encourage your father that he should have spiritual eyes. If you're a wife with a husband, it should be the same thing. You should encourage your husband that he should be seeing the world with spiritual eyes. For young women who are single and have hopes of getting married and not enjoying their singleness till their death, if you seek a husband, you should seek one with spiritual eyes. I have a fear for the young women in the church that when we decide to choose men, we are okay with worldly men, and we don't seek men with spiritual eyes. It is something that we need to really contemplate. What is your priority? What do you seek? What do you join yourself to? For the men, undoubtedly, we need to be men with spiritual eyes. There's too much at stake for us to be blind to what is really going on. I'll transition to the New Testament. You don't have to turn there, but it's good for reference to understand how others viewed the situation that we're in. In Ephesians 6:10-12, Paul's perspective says, "Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against authorities, against cosmic powers over the present darkness, against spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places." This is what we are in a fight against. 1 Peter 4:12, "Beloved, do not be surprised at the fire trial when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you." So when we're going through trials and tribulations, if we just view it in a physical sense and not understand the real purpose of your trial, then what is the point of fighting? Are we fighting in the wrong ways? Are we self-reliant rather than on God? Do we misplace our effort in a losing struggle rather than praying about it or approaching it with a spiritual worldview? In 2 Kings 19:35, you don't have to turn there. I'm just highlighting the point that we live in a world where there are spiritual forces at work. Here this talks about the Assyrian army being killed. I think this was King Hezekiah. The angel of the Lord is described as striking down 185,000 in the Assyrian camp, saving Jerusalem from siege during the reign of King Hezekiah. 185,000 killed. Not one M16, not one AK-47 fired, not one tank, not one aircraft bombing anything. Not even $100 billion. I will give it up for. You also have Numbers 22 to 35 with the angel of the Lord and Balaam. When he was riding a donkey. And the donkey tried to save him many times, and he beat the donkey until his eyes were opened and he saw the angel standing in front of him with the sword. Spiritual eyes. Brethren, additionally, we can look at Daniel 12:1. Spiritual forces. At the time shall arise Michael, the great prince, who has charge of your people, as he's speaking to Daniel. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never been seen since there was a nation till that time. But at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone whose name shall be found written in the book. Spiritual eyes. And here's a frightening thing. A couple of Mondays ago, we responded to the Seventh-day Adventists about the mark of the beast and the Sunday law. And although I, with all my heart, believe that they're wrong about how the Sunday law will be implemented, there's one thing that I could not escape in the research. And the fact is that we are now in spiritual times more than ever. Here's why. Because as we have this discussion about the mark of the beast, and we understand the characteristics around the mark of the beast, while we are here going about our daily lives, the world is implementing digital currencies, which means that sooner or later they will be able to restrict or track your purchases for different reasons. And I looked at a map in the presentation showing all the different countries that have started to implement this digital currency. And it dawned on me, if my calculations are right, and we are in the toes of that statue, or the emergence of the beast is almost fully present, or if the mark of the beast is almost at a stage where it is enforceable, then it means that the church is going to be persecuted. And we're heading towards that. Therefore, we need to start seeing the world with spiritual eyes. 10 decades ago, or a century ago, persons would not have contemplated the way that we are contemplated now. The consequence would not have been as dire as it is now. And as we are looking at the different ideologies that are being promoted by the Western countries and the EU, it stands at odds with God's way of governance. It stands at God's way with the family. And therefore, we need more men with spiritual eyes. I hope as we're going through the sermon, you meditate on what I'm saying. I'm not trying to bring doom and gloom, but I'm trying to articulate the reality of the situation that we're in. Let's get back to 2 Kings 6-8. Verse 18. We're moving on to the next spiritual lesson that we can take. It says here, and when the Syrians came down against him, Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, please strike this people with blindness. So he struck them with blindness in accordance with the prayer of Elisha. Not one AK-47, not one M16, not one tank, not one aircraft. Not even $100 billion. And Elisha said to them, this is not the way, and this is not the city. Follow me, you blind people. And I'll bring you to the man whom you seek. And he led them to Samaria. Now I want you to understand, this is one man that an entire great army came against, and he's just leading them off. Come, follow me. Come on, follow me. In verse 20, as soon as they entered Samaria, Elisha said, O Lord, open the eyes of these men, that they may see. So the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. And that brings me to my second point of the type of men that we need. We need men that can seek God in prayer. And I mean that very seriously. Men that in every situation that you're in, you can ask God for direction. Not depending on ourselves or ego or might or what we've accomplished in the past or what our status is in society, but genuinely seek God. To know that no matter what we think we can do, He can do more. No matter what situation we're in difficulty against, He can solve it. And we have more than enough evidence to believe this, to desire it, to seek after it. We need more men who seek God in prayer. It takes a humility to submit yourself to a higher authority and a higher power. We need more men like Elisha in the church. We move on and we go back to 2 Kings, and we're now at verse 21. As soon as the king of Israel saw them, he said to Elisha, my father. Now, I genuinely want you to understand the significance of this narrative. You are seeing your enemy brought into your city, blinded by a man who has God's favor. He's on your side. He has brought them into your city, in your midst, in your grasp. A great army. Can you think of what you would do in that moment? Your enemy within your grasp. You could end all wars right now. One defeat. He said, my father, shall I strike them down? Shall I strike them down? He answered, you shall not strike them down. Would you strike down those whom you have taken captive with your sword and with your bow? Here's where it gets ridiculous. He says, set bread and water before them. No, you're gone too far. No. That they may eat and drink and go back to their master. No, come on. 23, so he prepared for them a great feast. And when they had eaten and they had drunk, he said, he sent them away. And they went to their master, and the Syrians did not come again on raids into the land of Israel. Now I wanted to give you the history of the Syrian army. This is not a light thing that has just happened. Let me give you some background. You don't have to turn there, but you can just take notes. We have in 1 Kings 20, chapter 1. Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, gathered all his army together. 32 kings were with him. We're in 2 Kings. This is in 1 Kings. And horses and chariots. And he went up and closed in on Samaria and fought against it. So this Syrian army has already attacked them. This is not a brand new conflict. Here in 21, we see where the king was defeated, and the king of Israel went out and struck the horses and chariots and struck the Syrians with a great blow. So Syria attacked them, and they were defeated. That was once. 2 Kings 20:26. In the spring, Ben-Hadad mustered the Syrians and went up to fight against Israel again. In verse 29, and they camped opposite one another 7 days. Then on the 7th day, the battle was joined, and the people of Israel struck down of the Syrians 100,000 foot soldiers in one day, and the rest fled into the city of Aphek, and the wall fell upon 27,000 men who were left. 2 times already, the Syrian army has attacked Israel. I'll give you more history. 1 Kings 22:1. It says there, for 3 years, Syria and Israel continued without war. But in the 3rd year, Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, came down to the king of Israel. And the king of Israel said to his servants, by the way, do you know that Ramoth Gilead belongs to us? And we keep quiet and do not take it out of the hand of the king of Syria. You must remember where this is. So this would be in modern day Jordan. The king of Israel used to have a territory there. Syria has captured it. There's no war. 3 years has gone by. And the king of Israel says, we should really go and take back that land that really belongs to us, you know. Yeah, I think we should do that. As a matter of fact, come, let's go and get it. But here's a twist. Israel in this case was defeated. It says here in verse 34, but a certain man drew his bow at random and shot the king of Israel between the scale armor and the breastplate. Therefore he said to the driver of his chariots, turn around and carry me out of the battle, for I am wounded. Later on, he dies. But just to show the progressive war between Syria and Israel, 2 Kings 5, verse 1. This is the chapter before the one that we're in. We're in 2 Kings 6. So this is 2 Kings 5. This is before. I want you to notice how the Syrian army is interacting in Israel. Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master in high favor, because by him the Lord had given victory to Syria. He was a mighty man of valor, but he was a leper. Look at verse 2. Now the Syrians on one of their raids had carried off a little girl from the land of Israel. In one of their raids, they were taking hostages from Israel. Sounds familiar, right? So this is the history between the two camps. So when the Syrian army comes in front of the king of Israel, can you imagine the desire to kill him? He wants to exterminate them. You raid our country, you take off little girls, and then I finally get you in my grasp? If that was Jamaica, man, there would be no question what would happen there. You hope. But I did share that thought when I was preparing the sermon. I was saying, in today's conflict, when we have two persons, if Elisha was there, what would be the outcome? You know, what would he advise the world leaders today? Elisha is not there, but we are. How would we advise them? We are indeed supposed to help govern in the world to come, are we not? We see our Messiah is going to settle disputes between nations, will he not? So therefore we have to ask that question. How do we make sense of it all? What do we use to assess our judgment? So the question was, shall I strike them down? And Elisha said no. In fact, do the complete opposite. Feed your enemy. Have a great feast for your enemy. And not even keep them captive. Send them back home. And this is my third point. We need men that have the capacity to seek peace even when they are justified in conflict. And that's in any situation. You see, now we're talking about war, but I could easily be talking about marriages. In marriages, you'll always have conflict. Yes? Married persons? Yes? Sometimes it might seem like a war zone. And then sometimes you will feel like you're justified. But the question is, can you choose peace even when you're justified in conflict? Can you choose peace? Do you have that capacity inside of you? Or is it that you must always execute justice, judgment? Do you have the capacity to let go even when you have the right? And this could be outside of marriage. This could be easily in the workplace. When you have conflict with your co-workers and you know that you're right, but if you prolong it, it's not going to do much. So can you choose peace to move on? As simple as even the football field that we play on Sundays. Listen, if you guys come out and watch that football match now, very competitive. I would have no referee. So when So when a call goes on the football field, everybody feel like them right. Left and right. That's the reality. And sometimes, although you're a team really to get a call, for the sake of peace, you just have to let it go. But guess what? People are looking on to how we behave in these situations. In that same football field, Church of God has a good reputation there. And I remember one Sunday, we were told that we're out of time. One of the young men that we play with went for the football and came back and told us, oh, they said you have 5 more minutes. I was losing, so I was ready to play. Like, get up. The supervisor comes on the field and says, Ray, how you guys are continuing to play when I told you that you were out of time? Everybody on the field was shocked. And we said, no disrespect, it was a miscommunication. And, we asked the question. The guy said that you misheard. But the point is, in that situation, we could have reacted and said, no, you told us we have 5 minutes and feel like we're right, and we could have continued. But immediately we said, it's okay. Whatever was said here does not matter. Choose peace. And they respected us for that. And our reputation grew because of how we responded. So we always have to assess in times of conflict how it is that our reputation will impact others. How will they look on? How will they judge us? How will they assess us? If me and my wife are on the road and we're arguing like puss and dog and nobody relent, imagine how people look on and say, oh, look at the people of God. Go to church on the Sabbath. We need men that have the capacity to seek peace even when they're justified in conflict. And by the way, this is not just for the men. I think everybody in the audience should know this, right? This is not just for the men. It's also for the women. But it's a very important lesson that we must take. Because here's the irony. God does the same thing with us. God is justified in making sure that every single one of us is dead because we're sinners. But through mercy, he forgives us and allows us the opportunity to continue. Elisha also, and I'm moving on to the next point, lived by what I call the essence of the law. Now, in Israel's constitution in the Old Testament, and persons don't make a big deal about it, but the constitution of Israel in the Old Testament is very important. Exodus 19 to 24. When they were in the wilderness, they got what is known as the Book of the Covenant. finishes in Exodus 24 when Moses confirms the covenant that they would have heard Mount Sinai. Buried in it is a law about how you treat your enemies. This is Exodus 23 verse 4. And listen to what it says. Now imagine that if you were an Israelite at that time receiving this, what mindset you would have to live righteously. It says, if you meet your enemy's ox or his donkey going astray, notice, not your friend, not your family member, not your husband, not your daughter, not your brother, not your best friend, not your business partner that's out in the world. If you meet your enemy's ox or his donkey going astray, you shall bring it back to him. Not that he can see the donkey and lick down the donkey, you know. You have to bring it back to him. But it gets worse. If you see the donkey of one who hates you lying down under its burden, you shall refrain from leaving him with it. That means that the donkey, and the man has struggled. I hate you. Hate you. The law says you shall refrain from leaving him with it. You shall rescue it with him. You can imagine that? No, can you imagine that? No. Can you really imagine that? Hate you, you know? You see him on the donkey, you could have just walked past and said, yes, he must dead with that donkey today, boy. God, oh God. What a God of retribution. Yeah. Look how the donkey gave it to. Must get it today. Can you imagine? You have to take up yourself and go and help him. No, sometimes I really wonder, you know, if persons understand what Christianity really means, you know. No. You can't even say, God is merciful on me and has given my enemy into my hand. You can't even say that. No, I could easily ask us, what about us? Today, we say we're the people of God. What will we do? Undoubtedly, all of us in here has faced some sort of bad mind from somebody. We have had people who have come across who we have called enemies. Was our mindset that if we saw the person struggling, we would emotionally and mentally say to ourselves, no, God loves the enemies too. Let me go and help them. Elisha lived by the essence of the law. He was able to demonstrate it even in difficult times or circumstances. He did not depart from it mentally. He did not depart his heart from it. He lived it. And that is what we're also required to do. So my fourth lesson is we need men that cannot just know the law, but live by the very essence of it. The church will not have men who debate doctrine, but yet when it comes time to live the law, can't do it. That has no place in the church of God. We need more men like Elisha in the church. And I want us to consider the implications. Here's something that we should, as Christians, think about. Every human life is precious, even your enemies. All humans were made in the image of God. And I don't know how much we consider this, but just the very fact that we were made in the image of God, that we have a creative mind that is different from other animals. The fact that we have 5 senses, that we can experience sunshine, we can go to the beach, we can smell food, we can build buildings, we can create architectural drawings, we can create fashion. Just the very fact that you were even made in this image and you have an ounce of life, you were given a gift. Every human being. And God wants to give us extended life. If we were died today, we should be thanking God just for the very opportunity to live as His image. And that's why we're not for murder. That's why we should grieve when we see another image of God dead. We should grieve. It's a travesty. So when we're in these difficult situations, we need to assess our mindset, our emotions in all situations, marriage, work, church, wherever we are. We need to be aware of our weaknesses, where we're not fully developed. We need to meditate on what that means, so when we're in those situations, our weakness does not overcome us. And we must have the discipline to sacrifice our emotions, at least for the time being. Because I tell you this, sometimes when you're in the heat of a moment and some things leave your mouth, it's not coming back. And whoever has received it has received it. And whatever damage was done when they heard it, it's already done. Sorry might be too late sometimes. And sometimes it's easier for us to calm our emotions, wait, and decide to say what we need to say later. Sometimes you might realize the vast difference to how your response will be, Just even waiting 5 or 10 minutes. What you would have said immediately when you heard it might be very different when you say it 5 minutes later. But that is how I want us to apply what I'm saying. Let's get back to 2 Kings. Now we move to 2 Kings 8. So we're skipping from chapter 6 and we're going to chapter 8, 1 to 6. And here it says, Elisha had said to the woman whose son he had restored to life, "Arise and depart with your household." So there's this woman that Elisha would have allowed or prayed to have a son. She had a son. He died. Elisha restored the son, and he's still interacting with the same woman going forward. So Elisha said to her, "Arise and depart with your household, and sojourn wherever you can, for the Lord has called for a famine, and will come upon the land for 7 years." So the woman arose and did according to the word of the man of God. She went with her household and sojourned in the land of the Philistines 7 years. And at the end of the 7 years, when the woman returned from the land of the Philistines, she went to appeal to the king for her house and her land. Now the king was talking with Gehazi, the servant of the man of God, saying, "Tell me all the great things that Elisha had done or has done." And while he was telling the king how Elisha had restored the dead to life, behold, the woman whose son he had restored to life appealed to the king for her house and her land. And Gehazi said, "My lord, O king, here is a woman, and here is her son whom Elisha restored to life." And when the king asked the woman, she told him. So the king appointed an official for her, saying, "Restore all that was hers, together with all the produce of the fields from the day that she left the land until now." So the woman's things were restored. And because of her association with Elisha and all the great things that he would have done, this was granted to her. And this goes back for us in terms of how we live our life from day to day. We need godly men who live their life in such a way that good things will be done for other persons who are even associated with them. That means if I go to a workplace, because of my interaction with the people there, they should not say, you come to who? Ray Williams? You would never get through to them. That wicked. No. It must be that I have such a reputation that they can say, you come to Ray? Don't worry yourself, man. Just sit down right here. Everything will get through. You understand what I'm saying? I have persons like that at my workplace. I don't mean the good kind, I mean the bad kind. That if you approach certain departments and you call that name, all of a sudden government is government and the time takes very long. But if you call a different name, a good reputation, people go the extra mile just to help you, just because of how you would have lived your life amongst the people. And we need godly men that when their names are called, that people can evaluate their behavior and say, yes, this man, I have no anybody who is associated with this man. Good things will be done. And if you assess yourself as a man today, and people cannot call your name, then maybe you have to reconsider how you're doing things. Next point. Elisha did many things. And I want to point out what he did in 2 Kings 5. Now remember the little girl who was taken in the raid from Israel. She actually worked in Naaman's house. And here's what she said, because Naaman was a leper. He was a great man, but he was a leper. He had this problem. And look at what happened. It said, would that my Lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy. So Naaman went in and told his Lord thus, and so spoke the girl from the land of Israel. And the king of Syria, notice, this is the king of Syria. I just explained to you who king of Syria is. Go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel. And the king of Syria said, so he went, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, which read, when this letter reaches you, know that I have sent you Naaman, my servant, that you may cure him of his leprosy. And when the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, am I God to kill and to make alive, that this man sends word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? Only consider and see how he is seeking a quarrel with me. But when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent to the king saying, why have you torn your clothes? Yeah, let him come now to me, that he may know that there is a prophet in Israel. We skip down to verse 14. Naaman was told by Elisha to dip himself in the Jordan 7 times and he'll be cleansed. Naaman, upon hearing this, was very distressed. It's like, kind of foolishness is this? I mean, you have river in Damascus. Why am I going all the way to the Jordan? No, I can go back home and do this. Some other person said, no, the prophet has said this. Should you do it? He listened. Verse 14 says, so he went down and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan according to the word of the man of God. And his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child. And he was clean, no bleaching. Then he returned to the man of God, and he and all his company, and he came and stood before him. And he said, behold, I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. But he said, as the Lord lives before whom I stand, I receive none. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. Then Naaman said, if not, please let there be given to your servant 2 mule loads of earth. For from now on your servant will not offer burnt offering or sacrifice to any god but the Lord. We need godly men who can show compassion, who can empathize with persons who are in need. And despite whatever you and them have, extend a helping hand. And we have other stories of Elisha doing this. There was a widow who was in debt. And that's covered in 2 Kings 4, 1-7. We won't turn there. 2 Kings 4, 1-7. You can read it in your own time. She was in debt, and Elisha did a miracle for her. He continuously supplied her with oil. She filled up the oil jars, and she was able to pay her debt. He was compassionate, and he used his gift to help her. 2 Kings 6, 1-7, Elisha, once again, there was a man who borrowed an axe, and as they were chopping trees, the axe fell into the water. And Elisha used a stick to bring the axe up so that the man could get back the borrowed axe. But there's a point I must make about compassion. I said godly compassion and service. Why do I say that? Gehazi, the servant, the one his eyes were opened. He was very close to Elisha. And look what Elisha did. After Naaman was healed, Naaman offered him money, things. And Elisha said, no, I don't want it. I don't need it. I will not accept it. And listen what Gehazi did and said. 2 Kings 5:19. But when Naaman had gone from him a short distance, Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said, see, my master has spared this with Naaman, the Syrian, in not accepting from his hand what he brought. As the Lord lives, I'll run after him and get something from him. And he went and he took things from Naaman behind Elisha's back. One could say Gehazi was probably in need. Maybe he had debt that he needed to pay. Maybe this was this opportunity. Remember, Elisha just helped a widow in Kings chapter 4. Did he excuse Gehazi, his servant who was close to him? No, he did not. In 25 it says, where have you been, Gehazi? And he said, your servant went nowhere. Verse 27. Elisha therefore asked him, I think if my heart has turned away when you went out. 27. Therefore the leprosy of Naaman shall cling to you and to your descendants forever. So he went out of his presence a leper like snow. Remember, this is in chapter 5, we just gone over to chapter 6 where his eyes are now open. The point that I'm making is that when I say we need men of godly compassion, I don't mean compassion for all situations, and whatever situation happens, we should just let go. No. Compassion for the right situations, for the right reasons. Whatever must be punished, must be punished. Wherever there's true compassion, give true compassion. But it's not an excuse or a license to let everything go by. Godly compassion and commitment to service. We need more men like Elisha in the church. My final point. 2 Kings 2, verse 9. And this is taking us back to where Elisha and Elijah first met. And I want to make that distinction. Elijah is the one that is very famous, the one that went in the chariot up into the heavens or the sky. Elisha was his student. But there was an interaction between Elijah and Elisha before Elijah left in the chariots. And we see that narrative in 2 Kings 2, verse 9 down to 12. It says, when they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, ask what I shall do for you before I am taken from you. And Elisha said, notice what the request was. He says, please let there be a double portion of your spirit on me. Not just his spirit, a double portion. Elijah said to him, you have asked a hard thing. Yet if you see me as I am being taken from you, it shall be so for you. But if you do not see me, it shall not be so. And as they went on and talked, behold, chariots of fire and horses of fire separated two of them. And Elisha went up by a whirlwind into the heaven, or, into the sky, as it was known. And Elisha saw it and he cried, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen. And he saw him no more. The point that I want to make here is that we need men that are bold enough to ask big godly things. Not just big things, big godly things. And what I want us to also analyze is the portion of the Spirit, a double portion versus a single portion. What portion do we have? Ask God for big godly things. Be bold enough to know who your Creator is and what He grants. Ask for godly things. But the men have to believe that this can be granted to ask for it. If there is no asking, there is no receiving. But we do not ask in presumption, like it must be granted. It must be in accordance with God's will. But the fact is, we must have confident men in God who can, in prayer, ask God for big godly things. And have the confidence that God is able to grant it, as long as it's in line with His will. Now, as I close, I'll give you a fun fact. Most persons don't know this, but I'll highlight it just because we're talking about Elisha. Elisha was such a man of God that when he died, story goes that they were burying a man in a grave close to Elisha's. And they were set up Moabite raiders who came to the men. And the men took the body of the dead man and they threw it into the grave where Elisha's bones were. And guess what? The man was resurrected just by touching Elisha's dead bones in the grave. It's found in 2 Kings 13, 20 to 21. What a man of God, that even after he dies, his very bones were given power. Double portion. So in recap, we need more men like Elisha in the church, having spiritual eyes and a spiritual worldview, seeking God in prayer, having the capacity to seek peace even when they're justified in conflict, living by the essence of the law in their meditation and in their hearts and in their mind, living a good life that others can benefit, having godly compassion and service, and not afraid to ask God for big godly things. We need men who will lead a godly life by example. And my prayer for the church is very simple. Oh Lord, please open our eyes that we may see.